My wife said, I hope he'd crashes, while I drove 8 hours through a blizzard to surprise her. Now she's begging after I've frozen our joint account. So I, a 33-year-old guy, and my 31-year-old wife Sophie, have been married for 7 years. A classic narrative. High school sweethearts split up for college, met at a mutual friend's wedding, and the rest is history. Or so I thought. Things haven't been going great recently. Sophie has been distant. It started about 6 months ago, when she started spending more time with her sister, Karen, and her new circle of pals who all seem to drive cars they can't afford and go on vacations they can't afford. I'm not judging, just noting. Sophie began commenting on our starter home and asked when I would advance in my job. I choked it up into a phase. We live nicely. Nice 3-bedroom home in a decent neighborhood. We have 2 decent automobiles, an annual trip, and nothing spectacular, but we are doing well. Or I thought we were. Sophie celebrated her birthday last week. February birthdays are terrible in the Midwest, always cold and often snowy. Plans were canceled, so I resolved to do something special this year. Her actual birthday was on a Tuesday, but she had expressed wanting to visit her sister that weekend because they were planning to go to a spa on Saturday. I told her I couldn't leave work and would have to stay behind. It was a lie. I had actually planned to take Friday off. What's the plan? Surprise her by showing up at Karen's house on Friday evening with her favorite cake from a nearby bakery. Then take her out to a fancy supper that I'd already planned. I had even packed a suitcase containing her favorite dress and shoes. I had it all planned out. Thursday night, weather reports began to look questionable. Winter storm warning, 6 to 10 inches forecast across 3 states, including the entire path I had to drive. Most people would have canceled. I did not. Partly due to stubborn determination, and partly due to a desire not to waste my 3-week-old dinner reservation. I left at 7 a.m., Friday. What was supposed to be a 6-hour travel became an 8-hour nightmare. Driving through snow so heavy that I couldn't see the taillights in front of me was nerve-wracking. 3 crashes on the highway slowed traffic to a crawl. I had to stop twice for coffee simply to remain alert. But I kept thinking about Sophie's expression when I walked through the door. It's worth it, right? Arrived at Karen's neighborhood around 4 p.m. We had to park a block away because the plows hadn't arrived yet. I grabbed the cake box and struggled through ankle-deep snow. My jeans were saturated by the time I reached Karen's front door. The door was unlocked. I could hear them in the kitchen, chatter and laughter. I was ready to yell out when I heard my name. Sophie was in the middle of Jackson's sentence. Nothing. The radio is silent. Karen muttered something I couldn't understand. Sophie spoke again, this time with greater clarity. He texted earlier saying he was stuck at work, probably still there. In this weather, they'd have sent everyone home, she replied. Well, he's probably on the couch with his headphones on, playing that stupid game again. I froze in the doorway. This wasn't my typical lighthearted eye-rolling about my gaming habits. Her voice sounded contemptuous. At least he's not here ruining your birthday week, she remarked. I almost stepped in to introduce myself. I wish I had. Instead, I overheard what happened next. God, can you imagine? Sophie laughed. He'd insist on coming to dinner with us tonight and tell the same 3 stories he always tells. Then he'd get that sad puppy look when I want to go out tomorrow without him. My stomach began to cramp. I stood there, holding this ridiculous cake that I had driven 8 hours through a blizzard to deliver, listening to my wife mock me in front of her sister. Well, at least he's safely out of the way, Karen said. The roads are a disaster. My friend's husband got stuck on the highway for 3 hours. There was a pause. Sophie said something that I'll never forget. God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance. I must have made a noise because they both became quiet. I feared I'd been caught until Karen said, or at least a few months of silence. They both laughed. Actual laughter at the possibility of my death or hospitalization. I don't remember making a conscious decision about what to do next. I simply stepped into the kitchen, placed the cake box on the counter, and walked out. Their faces. I've never seen color drain from someone's face so quickly in real life. Sophie called my name, but I continued trudging through the snow back to my car. I sat there for around 20 minutes before finally inserting the key into the ignition. My phone had 17 missed calls and 38 text messages when I looked. I read absolutely none of them. I drove to the nearby motel. It cost me $80 for a room that smelled of cigarettes and desperation. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling till sunrise. When I turned on my phone again, there were 63 texts and 29 missed calls. I did not read them. I just texted my pal Caleb. Something happened to Sophie. Need a place to crash for a few days. Theo, being the MVP that is, just replied, doors unlocked, beers in the fridge. While Sophie was still at Karen's, I drove the 9-hour journey home and packed 3 suitcases full of clothes and necessities. I grabbed my vital documents from our fireproof box and headed to Theo's. That was 3 days ago. Sophie and I have yet to speak, despite her best efforts. She has called several numbers, left voicemails ranging from crying to angry, and even showed up at my workplace yesterday. I wasn't there because I called in sick. Today, I went to the bank and transferred half of our joint money to a new account in my name, froze our shared credit cards, changed all of my passwords, and informed my boss that I needed to work remotely for a week due to a family emergency. It's all very methodical, which is strange considering I feel like I'm in free fall. The trouble is, I keep hearing those words. I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance. Who says that about someone they should love? Who laughs at their spouse being silent for months? Even worse is the realization that this is most likely not the first time she has said anything similar, only the first time I have heard it. Our friends have begun to reach out. Sophie is apparently telling people that we had a misunderstanding, and I am overreacting. Classic gaslighting film. One mutual acquaintance texted, "Whatever happened, I'm sure you guys can work through it," without even asking for my opinion. I have not told anyone what I heard. Even Theo is unaware of the complete tale, as he has not pushed. He simply keeps the fridge filled and allows me space. Last night, I finally read some of Sophie's messages. They exhibit a predictable pattern. Confusion. Where did you go, and why did you leave? Defensiveness. It was just a joke. You weren't supposed to hear that. Angry words. You're being childish. Answer your damn phone. Manipulative words. I'm worried about you. Please let me know you're okay. Threats include, if you don't call me back, I'm calling the police to report you missing. Excuse me. I can't believe you'd do this to me on my birthday weekend. Not a single real apology. Not a single recognition of how terrible what she said was. After reading that, I blocked her number. I'm not prepared to talk to her. Maybe I'll never be. Today, I met with Graham, a financial advisor whom a coworker suggested. We spent 2 hours sorting through our accounts. I learned some interesting facts, such as Sophie's $17,800 per month online purchasing habit over the last year. Or, how she used a store credit card with a $3,000 amount that I had no idea about. Graham assisted me in developing a strategy for separating our accounts as gently as possible. It's all legal, nothing shady. But Sophie's about to get a reality check on her spending habits. The joint account I left untouched has enough money to cover this month's mortgage and utilities. Following that, we'll see. I'm not aiming to leave her impoverished. I just want her to understand that there are repercussions. The strange thing is, I still find myself wondering if I'm overreacting. Perhaps that was simply a prank. But then I remember her tone, her casualness in wishing me dead, and the laughter that followed. I know I am not. Theo suggests I talk to her, if only to gain closure. Maybe he is right. But I'm still processing, still trying to figure out who the person I married is. Tomorrow marks 4 days of silence on my end. Sophie's sister, Karen, attempted to call today. I didn't respond. Then Aaron, our neighbor, texted. Sophie was at our house crying on the front step because I changed the garage door code. A part of me feels awful, most of me does not. The insurance comment is not the only thing that keeps me awake at night. It is the laughs, the simple manner they both found humor in the idea of my hurting. Who does this? How long has she felt this way? I've also been pondering about the life insurance policy we got out 3 years ago. It's not much, $500,000, but enough to make you hope he crashes, I suppose. I'll call the insurance company tomorrow to inquire about changing the beneficiary. I realize this is getting long, but typing it out helps. Theo knows someone who works as a divorce lawyer. I will meet him for coffee tomorrow. I'm not sure if that's where this is going, but I want to know my alternatives. For those wondering what I'm going to do next, I don't know yet. A part of me wishes I could just disappear altogether, change my number, relocate to another state, and start over. But it feels like running away. Another portion seeks confrontation. I want to watch her expression as I repeat her words back to her. I want her to feel a tenth of the pain I feel. But most of all, I want to get rid of the hollow feeling in my chest. I want to stop seeing her face whenever I close my eyes. I'd like to quit hearing those words and laughs in my head on repeat. For the time being, however, I'm taking things one day at a time, keeping my head down, making plans, and leaving her to wonder where I am, what I know, and what I intend to do. If there is interest, I will provide updates as things go. Regardless, thank you for allowing me to vent. Sometimes the internet is the only place where strangers will simply listen without attempting to solve everything. Still standing and breathing. Jackson's update. Quick, too long, didn't read. A previous article for those joining. I drove 8 hours through a snowstorm to surprise my wife, Sophie, at her sister Karen's place for her birthday. Sophie told Karen she hoped I crashed for the insurance money. He walked away, leaving the cake on the counter. I've been living at my friend Caleb's apartment for 3 days, ignoring her calls and texts while I straighten out my finances. Lots of you requested an update as things progressed, so here we are. It's been a week since my previous post, and 10 days since I heard those words, which continue to repeat in my head like a cursed TikTok sound. They say that anger dissipates. All of the self-help podcasts Caleb has been listening to in the kitchen make this claim. Anyway, the wrath passes, leaving you with a clear head to make wiser decisions. I am still waiting for that portion. Last Wednesday, the 4th day of silence, I awoke with a plan. Not a good or healthy plan, but one that seemed perfect in the moment. I waited until 9:30 a.m., knowing Sophie would be at work. Then I returned home, our home, with 3 empty suitcases in Caleb's pickup truck. The house appeared precisely the same as when I left. The coffee mug remained on the counter and mail piled up by the door, but it felt strange, foreign, like going into a movie set of my life rather than the real thing. I began in the bedroom, packing all of my clothes except the ones Sophie had chosen for me and leaving them hanging in the closet like abandoned cocoons. I took my grandmother's watch from the dresser, my notebooks from the bookcase, and an external hard disk containing all of our images. Perhaps it was petty, but I paid for the dang thing. In the office, I unplugged my gaming setup. We left the desk, which we had bought together, but took the chair. I purchased it after she complained about the squeaky wheels on the previous one. We found our marriage certificate in the filing cabinet and carried it with us. Not sure why, but it felt essential. I slowly removed myself from the house. My books, albums, tools from the garage, and the strange metal sculpture I bought at the art fair she despised. 4 hours spent methodically eliminating my presence. I didn't take anything we'd bought together, including the couch we chose after 3 weekends of shopping, the kitchen table where we'd eaten thousands of meals, and the bed where we'd slept, fought, made up, and made love. I left all of our frame photographs exactly where they were. Something about seeing my face staring back at her from every wall and surface felt right, a reminder of what she had discarded. Before leaving, I did 3 things. First, I lowered the thermostat to 62 degrees. Sophie was usually upset when the temperature dropped below 70 degrees. Second, I removed the refrigerator's light bulb, a little annoyance that would go unnoticed for days but irritated her every time she opened it at night. Third, I set the Wi-Fi password to I hope he crashes 2023 and unplugged the router. Small, trivial things would make her feel my absence in 100 tiny ways before she could grasp the larger loss. As I secured the door behind me, our neighbor Erin was receiving her mail. She furrowed her eyebrows as she looked at Caleb's truck loaded with my belongings, then at me. I just shrugged and explained that I was bringing some items to give. She didn't believe me, her eyes said so, but she nodded and went inside. Midwest civility. Do not ask awkward questions. Mind your own business. Usually irritates me, but that day I was grateful. Back at Caleb's, I placed everything in his garage except 2 suitcases containing clothes and basics. He helped me unload without asking any questions. After we finished, he simply handed me a beer and remarked, "Sometimes life kicks you in the teeth." Thursday was a financial day. We met with Graham again. He had gathered all of our account information and organized it into a spreadsheet that made my stomach flip. Sophie had spent far more than I realized. Not just the store credit card I mentioned earlier, but cash withdrawals from our joint bank account. $300 here, $500 there. Over $12,000 in the last year that she couldn't account for with any receipts or transactions I could find. Graham helped me write an official letter requesting financial separation. No divorce papers yet, but I made it obvious that I would no longer be responsible for any additional obligations she accumulated. She had it couriered to her workplace. Petty? Maybe. Effective? Definitely. I also canceled our joint streaming and subscription services. We changed the passwords for our cloud storage, where we held vital data. I redirected all of my mail to a P.O. box, small, methodical slashes into our interwoven lives. On Friday morning, I finally checked my social media, 17 Facebook messages, 34 Instagram DMs. Even my idle Twitter account had notifications. People checked to see whether I was okay. People are inquiring what happened to Sophie. People choose sides without knowing the entire facts. I only shared one thing, a photograph of a half-eaten birthday cake on a kitchen counter. There's no caption or context, just the cake. Within an hour, my phone exploded. Friends texted to inquire what it meant. Sophie called 6 times within 20 minutes. Her best friend Nina texted me to see if I was all right because Sophie was so concerned. I responded to none of them. That afternoon, I met with Raun at work to convey my need for some personal time. He was surprisingly understanding, simply asking how much time I needed and if I could still manage the Wilson project remotely. I agreed to the project and requested 2 weeks' time. He didn't question me, simply clapped me on the shoulder and stated that sometimes space was the greatest way to gain clarity. This was the first decent counsel I'd received since the whole thing began. Saturday marked the first serious confrontation. I was in the grocery store, browsing at frozen pizzas and trying to remember which brand Caleb preferred, when someone yelled my name. I turned around to see Karen standing there, shopping basket in hand, face pale as if she had seen a ghost. She began with the usual. Sophie is worried sick. Everyone is concerned. Won't I just talk to her? When I did not react, her tone changed. They said I was being childish. They said it was only a joke between sisters. They claimed I was exaggerating the situation. I finally spoke. I asked her directly if she believed desiring death on your spouse for insurance money was typical sister joke stuff. I asked if she wanted her boyfriend to hear her say something similar. Sophie was asked if she recognized the joke was the product of months of increasing resentment. She had no replies, only muttered something about misconceptions and context. I returned the pizza, left my partially loaded card in the aisle, and went out. Petty. Yes. Satisfying? Also yes. Sunday was peaceful. Caleb invited several pals around to watch the game. They were all aware that something was amiss. But no one asked. Just handed me beverages and cleared space on the couch. For 3 hours, I felt almost normal. Then Monday arrived, and with it came reality. My temporary leave from work has begun. The house I'd shared with Sophie for 5 years was half empty across town, and my phone showed 15 missed calls from her overnight. I eventually listened to one voicemail. Her voice sounded different, scratchy and rough. She claimed she hadn't been sleeping. He said the house felt odd without me. She said she'd seen more and more of my belongings missing, and it was worrying her. Asked whether I would ever return, or if I was abandoning our marriage. Something about her wording, portraying our relationship as if it were a Tinder connection that could be easily abandoned, hardened something. I texted Caleb that I was going for a drive, and ended up parking outside our houses, mine and Sophie's, for nearly an hour. Her automobile was not there. Even though it was daytime, the porch light remained on, as if she had forgotten to turn it off. The recycle bin at the curb was full of wine bottles. I didn't go inside. I sat there considering how many mortgage payments I had left, if I should sell it and split the cash, or try to buy her out. We were wondering how we had gone from eternity to forensic accounting in 10 days. Tuesday provided another financial surprise. Our credit card provider sent us a notification concerning odd activities. Sophie had spent over $2,000 at department stores and boutiques, retail therapy or purposeful financial sabotage. In either case, I contacted and reported the card as stolen. I had a new one shipped to my post office box. Another bridge is burned. That night, I finally put anything serious online. Not about Sophie particularly, just a simple status. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. Vague enough to mean anything. Detailed enough for those in the know. Sophie would see it. Her friends would notice it. The story was turning from Jackson having a breakdown to something catastrophic happening. Wednesday marks 2 weeks since I heard those words in Karen's kitchen. 2 weeks of silence on my end. Sophie's attempts to contact me over the course of 2 weeks were increasingly desperate. I visited with the lawyer Caleb recommended. Graham is a kind man. Yes, the same name as my financial advisor, which became confused quickly. He outlined my alternatives. Divorce would be simple because we don't have children, but the house and finances would remain complicated. He proposed a legal separation first to give both of us time to sort things out. I consented, and he completed the paperwork on the spot. He said he could have it served as early as Friday. The ball was now moving, gaining momentum with each day of stillness. Things got out of control on Thursday. I was working remotely from Caleb's dining room table when the doorbell rang. Caleb responded, then returned, appearing uncomfortable. "Sophie was outside," he exclaimed, weeping and begging to see me. I sat there transfixed, coffee halfway to my lips, as Caleb clumsily wondered whether he should send her away or invite her in. Neither option felt appropriate. I wasn't prepared to see her. I wasn't ready to hear whatever justification she had prepared. But sending her away felt like handing her ammunition, confirmation that I was being harsh. So I nodded and Caleb allowed her in. She looked terrible. Her hair was filthy, her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was wearing what appeared to be the same sweater from days before. She stopped at the doorway, looking at me as if she couldn't believe I was real. I did not stand or offer her a seat. I simply waited. She spoke first, inquiring whether I was truly having her served with separation papers. Apparently, Graham's assistant had called to confirm our address, and she had persisted until they revealed what the call was about. So much for the sense of surprise. I answered, "Yes, I was." She asked why I wouldn't talk to her and refused to let her explain. Her voice kept catching, as if she was forcing the words out. I informed her that there was nothing to explain. I heard exactly what I heard. She remarked that wasn't what I expected. She had been concerned about job and finances, and her sister always brought out the worst in her. That she did not intend it literally. It was just black humor after a few glasses of wine. I inquired if she remembered exactly what she had said. She paused, then claimed she had said, "I wish he'd just crash on the couch for a while," and that I had misheard. That is when I took out my phone and played the audio. Yes, I did have a recording. Not because I planned it. I had been using a voice memo app to record present ideas while driving, trying to think of something else to get her for her birthday than cake. When I came, the recording did not stop. It was purely an accident, fate, or whatever you want to call it. Her exact words, delivered in her precise voice. "God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance." Karen's response. Or at least a few months of silence. Later on there was laughter. Sophie's cheeks turned pale as she listened to herself. She attempted to take my phone. I moved it away. She began crying harder, claiming that it was taken out of context. She did not mean it. She'd never harmed me. I only asked her one question. "Would you have told me about this conversation if I hadn't heard it myself?" Her silence was sufficient. Caleb had made himself scarce when she arrived, but now he returned to the room, nervously urging that they resume the topic another time, when emotions were less intense. Sophie ignored him and focused solely on me. She began listing all of the things she had realized during the last 2 weeks. How much she relied on me. The house felt empty without me. Why couldn't she sleep in our bed alone? How she had never intended to hurt me and would spend the rest of her life making up to me if I would only come home. It was the performance of a lifetime. Tears, shaking palms, and a voice breaking at just the right moments. 2 weeks ago, I would have been moved and believed her. But something had changed within me. I'd spent 14 days reflecting on not only what she'd said, but why she'd said it. The contempt that must have been developing. The casual cruelty. The person who could laugh at the prospect of my death was not the person I thought I'd marry. So I told her the truth. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. The separation papers were not intended to penalize her. They were about shielding myself until I determined whether there was anything left to save. She did not take it well. I started claiming I was wasting 7 years because of one foolish comment. When people vent, they often say things they don't mean. That I was unkind by disappearing and ignoring her. I sat there, allowing her words to wash over me without entering. When she finally ran out of steam, I reminded her that the separation papers will be handed tomorrow and that she should read them carefully before making any decisions about the following steps. She departed sobbing. Mascara streaked over her cheeks. Caleb returned with 2 beers and stated it was the most unpleasant thing he'd seen since his parents divorced. Dark humor, but I admired the effort. That night I was unable to sleep. I kept reliving her expression when she heard the recording. Shock, panic, but no true sorrow, as far as I could tell. It's only the fear of the repercussions. The papers were delivered on Friday morning, just as promised. By Friday afternoon, Sophie's sister was posting vague social media updates about men who overreact and wreck marriages over misunderstandings. It's funny how families band together even when they know who's at fault. However, something unexpected occurred. Sophie's best friend Nina messaged me, simply a text, stating she had heard the entire story, including what Sophie had truly said, and she was sorry I was going through this. She claimed she'd known Sophie since college and had witnessed her make similar harsh remarks about others. She said she'd tried to talk to Sophie about it before, but was turned down. It was the first message from anyone in Sophie's circle to acknowledge and not diminish my suffering. I did not answer, but it stayed with me. Perhaps Sophie's reply was not a slip in judgment, but rather a reflection of her actual character. Perhaps I had been overlooking or disregarding red flags for years. The weekend passed peacefully. Caleb went on a date, so I had the home to myself. I ordered pizza, watched a sci-fi series Sophie had always refused to watch with me, and tried not to think about the fact that, in another life, in another timeline, I'd be at home with my wife, celebrating our monthly pizza and movie night. Sophie texted only 2 words on Sunday night. I'm sorry. First, sincere apologies in 17 days. No excuses, no demands to speak, just those 2 words. I did not answer, but I gave it more attention than I should have. On Monday morning, day 18 of my new reality, I awoke to see Sophie parked in her car outside Caleb's house, just watching the door. Caleb saw her first and pointed her out through the kitchen window. I called her and inquired what she was doing. She claimed she only needed to see me to make sure I was okay. She stated that she would not approach the house or cause a scene. She simply needed photographic confirmation. It was both unsettling and strangely touching. I advised her to go home because this was not helping either of us. She inquired if I had read her message. I said yes. She asked whether I thought she was sorry. I said I didn't know. Then she posed the question I'd been dreading. Are you filing for divorce? I told her the truth. I hadn't decided yet. She sat in her car for an additional hour before ultimately driving away. Caleb suggested I change the locks on my house, just in case. I agreed, and we spent the afternoon replacing deadbolts. Another minor severance of our interconnected lives. Today is 3 weeks since that night at Karen's. 3 weeks of silence, primarily due to separation and cleaning through the ruins of what I believed was a strong marriage. I'm not sleeping well. I miss dumb things, like Sophie always buying decent coffee, even if it was more expensive. She used to sing horribly in the shower every morning. Her absurd assortment of fuzzy socks would invariably end up on my side of the bed. But I don't miss the rising contempt that I now understand has been building up for months. Don't miss walking on eggshells around her mood swings. Don't miss the subtle jabs that I had dismissed as simply her sense of humor. The separation papers were signed and submitted. The lawyer says we're officially in a legal separation phase, which lasts 6 months. We're still lawfully married, but we're living separately and have our finances divided. After 6 months, we will either reconcile or file for divorce. 3 weeks ago, I would not have hesitated to declare reconciliation impossible. Now I'm less certain. Not because I've forgiven her, but because untangling a 7-year marriage is difficult. Houses, bank accounts, families, and friends are all interwoven in ways I'm only now beginning to grasp. My phone is displaying a notice as I write this. Another note from Sophie. Can we meet? Neutral location, just to talk. Please. I am not sure what I am going to say. A part of me wants to hear her out. Part of me believes it is simply deferring the inevitable. Most of me is simply bored of the whole scenario. But I think I'll agree to meet her, if only to tell her face to face what I've been typing to strangers on the internet. If anything noteworthy occurs, I will provide an update. And thank you for all of the suggestions in the previous article, even the bizarre notions about glitter and her shampoo bottle. Some of you need therapy, but I admire your unity. Still standing and breathing. Jackson's final update. It has been precisely 25 days since I left that cake on the counter. 25 days of stillness, separation, and more adulting than I'd ever desired. This will likely be my final update because, well, there are only so many ways to examine a dead marriage before even the internet becomes bored. First and foremost, thank you for all of your comments and direct messages, even the bizarre ones. No, I didn't follow the instructions to put fish in her car vents. You guys are savages. So, this is the coffee shop meeting. I arrived 15 minutes early since fear makes me punctual. Downtown groundwork. Coffee at 2 p.m. On a Thursday, it was busy enough to provide background noise but not so full that we were overheard. I chose a corner table, ordered a black coffee that I did not desire, and waited. Sophie arrived exactly on time, not 5 minutes late as she normally is. Hair is done, makeup is light, and she is wearing the blue sweater I gave her for Christmas last year. I'm confident that all of these decisions were strategic. The first thing she said after sitting down was not hello. It was that she had lost 7 pounds since I left. Just toss that fact as like it meant something. Stress weight loss as a relational currency. A classic Sophie maneuver. I didn't acknowledge it, instead asking why she wanted to meet. She had prepared handwritten notes on a yellow legal pad. The scene was so unexpected that I nearly laughed. This woman, who would rather die than create a grocery list, had bullet-pointed her way through whatever the goal of the talk was. Her first point was that she sincerely apologized for what she had said. It was nasty and thoughtless, and she did not intend it. She'd been worried about work, unhappy that I was missing her birthday weekend, or so she thought, and spent the afternoon drinking wine with Karen. The words simply came out. I questioned why she had laughed afterward. She flinched as if I had flicked water in her face. They said it was anxious laughter. Karen was continuously bringing out her ugliest side. Said it was a naive attempt to appear edgy and cool in front of her sister. Second point, she had taken our connection for granted. She had grown accustomed to the protection and security I gave. She had stopped appreciating all I did, and instead focused on what I didn't accomplish. Third point, the last 3 weeks have been a wake-up call. She discovered how much she relied on me. Not just financially, though that was a factor, at least she was honest, but also emotionally. They said the house was too quiet. She claimed she had started talking to herself only to hear a voice. Fourth, she wanted to try couples therapy. I had previously discovered someone who specialized in restoring trust after betrayal. I scheduled a preliminary appointment for next week. Wouldn't you please think about it? Throughout it all, I sat there sipping my now cold coffee, scanning her face for traces of the woman who had carelessly wished me dead. Was this an act or genuine remorse? I could still not tell. When she concluded her prepared statements, she set down the legal pad and looked straight at me for the first time. They asked what I was thinking. I told her I was thinking about parallel universes, about how, in another timeline, I would never have driven through that snowfall, never heard what she said, and would still be living in blissful ignorance, sleeping next to someone who would laugh at the notion of my death. She began crying, not the theatrical sobbing from Caleb's living room, but quiet tears that she wiped away with a napkin as if they were an inconvenience. I outlined my terms. No negotiating points, just facts. The separation would last for the full 6 months, as anticipated. I would not be moving back in during that time. I wasn't ruling out reconciliation, but I wasn't saying yes to couples therapy just yet. I needed time. She nodded throughout, as if each word were a little blow she was taking. When I finished, she simply asked if I hated her. The weirdest part is that I didn't. Still, don't. There is anger, disappointment, and hurt, but no hate. I told her that. She seems really astonished. She said she had been persuading herself that I must despise her because I had entirely shut her away. Said it was almost worse that I didn't, because it indicated I no longer cared enough to feel something that powerful. That stung because it wasn't completely wrong. The conversation then came to a close. We agreed to contact via email about practical issues such as the house and bills. She would keep paying the mortgage, which is also in her name. I would continue to pay my fair amount of utilities. We'd reassess in month 3 of the separation. As we stood up to go, she hesitated before asking if she might hug me. I said no. She nodded as if she had expected it, gathered her belongings, and walked away. I remained there for another half hour, thinking about how strange it was to have such a business-like talk with someone I'd seen cry. Someone who has supported your head when you have food illness. Someone who knew every foolish, embarrassing anecdote about your childhood. 7 years are condensed to bullet points on a legal pad. Life proceeded in its strange new routine. Following that, I extended my remote work arrangement till the end of the month. Caleb's extra room felt less transitory once I purchased a good mattress topper and hung a few pictures. I developed routines, morning run, work, 3 gym visits per week, and preparing dinner with Caleb when our schedules coincided. The silent technique continued to produce unanticipated results. Sophie seems to be reflecting despite my minimal engagement with her. A week after our coffee shop meeting, her sister Karen sent me a shockingly humble message. She claimed she'd been a horrible influence on Sophie for years, encouraging her to be brutally honest, read, harsh, as a warped sort of sisterhood bonding. She expressed disgust with herself for laughing that day. She did not seek for forgiveness. She only wanted me to know that she realized her involvement in the issue. I didn't respond, but I did take screenshots, not for leverage, but to remind myself that I wasn't crazy for feeling betrayed. Meanwhile, the financial pressure was more intense than I had anticipated. Sophie's pal Nina reached out again. Sophie stated that she was difficult to sustain her lifestyle on her income alone. She had to cancel her monthly spa membership. Was looking for a roommate to assist with the mortgage, but didn't want to move anyone in because she was still hopeful I'd return home. I noticed the manipulative strategy, which involved using a friend to make me feel bad, but I did not fall for it. I thanked Nina for the news and invited Sophie to contact my lawyer if she wanted to negotiate financial arrangements. Around day 30, Sophie's approach changed. Her communications became less emotional and more realistic. She began selling some of her more expensive clothes and bags through resale apps. She got rid of her second automobile, the ridiculous convertible she insisted on buying last summer. She even said in an email that she was considering taking classes to enhance her earning prospects. It felt like I was witnessing someone's rapid development. Strangely, I felt proud of her, even though I was resolved not to rescue her. Day 35 presented an unexpected twist. I checked the mail at my P.O. box. I opened the box and discovered a hefty envelope from Sophie. Inside, there was a handwritten letter, 10 pages, front and back, and a USB stick. The letter was essentially a chronology of our relationship written from her perspective. Every significant moment, good and unpleasant. The proposal at the lake, our first major disagreement over her spending, the miscarriage in year 3 that we never discussed properly, and the steady shift in how she perceived me, from partner to provider to impediment. It was brutally honest in a manner that our previous chats had never been. She admitted to resenting my satisfaction with our life because she always desired more. She admitted to comparing our lifestyle unfavorably to her friends, although knowing they were drowning in debt only to keep up appearances. She admitted to flirting with her coworker Isaac last year, though she insisted nothing physical happened. The USB stick contained audio files, presumably recordings of her therapy sessions made with her therapist's approval. I only heard one. Couldn't take any more. Hearing her critique our marriage with a stranger, as well as the genuine confusion in her voice when she tried to explain why she said what she did about the insurance money, was too intimate and raw. I erased the files and stored the letter in my document box. I'm not sure if I'll read it again, but throwing it away felt wrong. Day 40 saw another development. We ran into our neighbor Erin at the hardware shop. She mentioned that Sophie had been organizing some sort of weekly gathering at her residence, not parties, but meetings. He claimed there were always 6 or 7 automobiles out front on Wednesday nights. Curiosity got the best of me. That Wednesday, I parked down the street and watched. Between 6 and 6:30, 7 women arrived. All of them were about Sophie's age. Some I recognized as her friends, while others were strangers. I did not approach. That'd be weird. But I did text Nina later, gently wondering what Sophie was up to these days. Sophie, she explained, had founded a women's accountability group devoted to financial literacy and overcoming unhealthy relationship patterns. That wasn't what I expected. Around day 45, the social media dynamics changed substantially. Karen, who had been conspicuously silent about our predicament online, wrote a lengthy status about assisting my sister with her awakening and recognizing detrimental tendencies. She tagged Sophie, who simply replied, "Love you, but this journey is mine to share when I'm ready." Our common pals were aware of this. People who had previously given me space began contacting me, asking what was going on. The rumor mill whirled. Someone had heard Sophie was in rehab. She was not. Someone else had heard that I had depleted our finances and left her penniless. Also false. Another stated we'd been having troubles for years and the split was mutual. Partially true, I suppose. I kept my silence. Let them ponder. Day 50 held a major moment. For the first time since leaving, I returned to the house when Sophie was still there. I needed to get my winter clothing from the garage because Minnesota spring is a lie, and we got 6 inches of snow overnight. I texted her first to make sure everything was okay. She immediately said, "Of course." She'd be at home all day working on a project. Driving into the driveway felt weird. The yard requires mowing. The flower beds remained untended. Small reminders of my absence. Sophie greeted me at the door, but did not hover. She simply told me to spend as much time as I needed before retreating to the kitchen, where she appeared to be painting. The house felt strange. It also smelled strange. Less like my washing detergent, more like the essential oil diffuser she'd always wanted to use, but I thought it was too strong. Photographs had been altered. Some furniture was moved. Not dramatically, but enough to notice. In the garage, I discovered my winter belongings neatly boxed and labeled. Not thrown together in haste, but properly packaged. She'd even included items I'd forgotten about, like my favorite scarf and the pricey gloves my mother had bought me 2 Christmases ago. Sophie came out with a mug of coffee while I was loading the boxes into my car. She asked if I wanted to see what she was working on inside. There's no pressure, just an offer. Curiosity won out. Followed her into the kitchen, where she had set up a little art studio. She was painting wooden signs with encouraging slogans, the kind she used to tease people for purchasing at Target. She appeared ashamed as she stated it was therapeutic, and she had sold a couple at a local farmer's market. We spoke for maybe 15 minutes. Surface-level issues. Weather, her parents' anniversary, and the water heater making that knocking noise again. A typical chat between 2 people who used to share everything. As I was leaving, she remarked something that stayed with me. She claimed she'd been reading about grief and recognized she was grieving our marriage while yet wishing to save it, that the 2 things were contradicting each other in her mind. I nodded and said I understood, because I had the same conflict. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. Day 60 provided financial clarity. Sophie had been according to our agreement, according to Graham, the financial consultant rather than the lawyer. There are no new joint debts. She makes regular payments on her personal credit cards. She'd even paid off the store card I hadn't known about. Graham indicated it could be time to explore more permanent financial arrangements, depending on how I felt about reconciliation. I realized I hadn't seriously considered that option in weeks. I had been so intent on establishing boundaries that I had avoided the larger topic. So I developed a pro-con list, similar to how you would choose which car to buy or which job offer to accept. Except that this was about deciding whether to try to save a 7-year marriage or to end it permanently. The list did not help. Certain things cannot be quantified. Day 70. Caleb said that he was seriously dating someone and that they were considering moving in together. Not soon, but in the next few months. He informed me that I could stay as long as I needed, but the implication was plain. It's time to work out a more permanent agreement. That weekend, I visited 3 apartments. I signed a 6-month lease for the second one, a fresh start with a 1-bedroom, walkable downtown location, and a great kitchen. I told Sophie via email. She replied with a single line. I understand, but the door here remains open. Moving day arrived on day 75. Caleb assisted, along with 2 other buddies. 4 hours spent hauling boxes and furniture up 3 flights of stairs since the elevator was broken. Following that, we ordered pizza and beer. I christened the property with a makeshift living room picnic because I hadn't yet purchased a dining table. That night, alone in my new apartment, I finally accessed the photographs folder on my external hard drive. 7 years of memories, trips, holidays, and random daily moments. Sophie is laughing at something off camera. Sophie sleeps with her mouth slightly opened. Sophie in the early days, looking at me as if I hung the moon. I didn't cry. I simply sat there, feeling the weight of everything we'd built and lost. Day 80. Sophie emailed me and asked if we might meet again. She wanted to talk about what might happen once our 6-month separation ended. Even though it was still 3 months away, she wanted to be ready for whatever happened. We met at a different coffee shop with a more neutral atmosphere. She looked nice, healthy. She had chopped her hair to shoulder length. I wore minimal makeup and plain clothing, jeans, a sweater, and boots, and swapped my dazzling designer purse with a canvas tote. The chat was direct. She inquired whether I was leaning toward reconciliation or divorce. I honestly told her that I had not made a decision. I asked what she wanted. She expressed her desire to try again, but only if I could someday forgive her. Really forgive, not merely say the words while harboring animosity. She said she had evolved in the last 11 weeks, and was still changing, and she wanted to show me who she was rather than tell me about herself. I responded I thought she had changed. I said I had also changed. I stated that I was unsure whether our new selves were still compatible or had evolved in different directions. She nodded, indicating that was fair. Then she gave me a sealed packet. Said it included her proposed terms for either reconciliation or divorce. She asked me to read it when I was ready and share my comments. I opened it 3 days later. Inside was the most mature, logical document I could imagine from someone battling for their marriage while ready to end it. For reconciliation, 6 months. Of couples treatment before cohabitation. Full financial transparency on both parties. Regular check-ins on relationship satisfaction. Annual State of the Union meetings to discuss goals and progress. For divorce, fair asset distribution based on participation rather than absolutely 50-50. She would buy out my half of the house for market value. No alimony either way. Clean break with minimal lawyer involvement, if possible. It was rational, sensible, and diametrically opposed to Sophie, who had wished me dead for insurance money 3 months before. I emailed her that both sets of terms appeared reasonable. I asked for time to make my decision. She said simply, "Take as much time as you need. It's day 90 today." It had been 3 months since I heard those remarks in Karen's kitchen. 3 months of silence, seclusion, introspection, and development. I've been thinking about cake. The one I left on Karen's counter. It was supposed to be a birthday celebration. The instant everything changed. This afternoon I went to the same bakery, purchased the same cake, drove it to my new apartment, and placed it on my new counter. Then I took a photo and texted it to Sophie, which was the first direct text I'd sent in 90 days. She made an urgent call. I let it go to voicemail. Then I sliced a piece of cake, sat on my secondhand couch, and listened to her message. She did not beg. Did not make any assumptions. Just stated that she understood the symbolism. She said she would accept any decision I made. She said she was proud of how I carried myself during all of this, with dignity rather than destruction. She apologized again, not expecting forgiveness, but offering it nevertheless. I'll be meeting with the lawyer tomorrow. Not to file for divorce, yet, but to discuss the next steps in any way. To grasp what reconciliation would be like after something like this. I want to know exactly what I'm choosing. Tonight, I'll eat this cake alone. Not out of grief, but because some trips must be completed alone. I'm not sure if Sophie and I have a future together. The wound she caused was deep. She shattered trust, and it will be difficult to rebuild. But I am confident that whatever decision I make will be based on strength rather than fear, clarity rather than confusion. Those statements at Karen's kitchen table showed something unpleasant, but perhaps they also revealed something important. Perhaps we needed to break totally to discover what we were truly made of. Perhaps certain things, once broken, should remain that way. In any case, I am content with the process. The man who left the cake on the counter 90 days ago would have lit himself on fire to keep Sophie warm. The man writing this now understands his own worth. I'll provide one last update after I make my ultimate decision. But for now, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for joining me on this trip, internet strangers. Your counsel, support, and occasional horrific retribution suggestions have been an odd type of therapy. Still upright, still breathing, stronger than before. Jackson.